Nirali, I want to open it up with just a very high level question. What do we mean by SaaS license management playing a pivotal role in modern IT asset management? Where does it fit?
Yeah, Victor, great question. So let's start by defining what modern IT means, right? So asset management can fall under various categories. You have hardware assets, software assets, you will have your cloud assets. That would include the hybrid version as well as the pure SaaS. So when we refer to this whole discipline of IT asset management, we are looking at an umbrella which covers everything that is hardware, your software, as well as your on-prem licenses and including the true SaaS applications. When it comes to your complete IT asset estate, the ServiceNow platform, the software asset management offering, it has the capability that will help you monitor, track all your assets, which again, like I emphasized earlier, it includes your hardware assets, you have your software, you have your on-prem version, your cloud, and also your other cloud resources. So with this, the beauty of the product is you don't have to go into different systems or different applications to track what assets you own anymore. You just have to come into the platform. You'll be able to track everything in one place. So that is where the strength of the platform lies, helping you capture all your asset estate in one place.
No, that's great. I mean, that really sets it apart, right? That's what modernizes asset management, is the ability to have everything in one single pane of glass, centrally monitored and centrally point of control where you can take action and make meaningful decisions for your business. So specifically speaking on the SaaS side, what are we trying to resolve? What is the value we're giving to customers, and what value as a customer am I trying to give to my own business, to my business stakeholders?
Yeah, so Victor, on that one, as we all know that the SaaS sprawl has been skyrocketing, especially over the last 2, 3 years, ever since COVID started, the work from home situation's been different. A lot of collaboration's been happening online versus in person. So what organizations have noticed is many of their employees have started signing up for, let's say, SaaS applications or tools that they need for their day-to-day functions, right? And by doing so, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get quick access to these tools, which means they're trying to bypass any kind of managerial approvals that they would need or any kind of IT approvals, right? Those approvals are thought of as secondary when it comes to just procuring and using those applications. Over a period of time, what organizations have also realized is because of this usage of these SaaS applications that have not really been approved purchases by their IT organization, it's caused a lot of security and compliance issues, right? So that pretty much calls now for a system that will help them manage this entire process. And by entire process, I mean right from requesting it to getting it approved and helping provisioning the cloud services, right? So if you look at this SaaS license management lifecycle, within the ServiceNow platform, you have the ability to request for these SaaS applications through your service catalog. You have the procurement team that can track the workflow of where that request is and help you deploy that application once you're entitled to it. And then oftentimes what happens is we will also continue just monitoring your usage, right? Because all these organizations have huge demand for various applications, and users have been subscribed to so many applications that it becomes very important to track their actual usage. So we will help you monitor what you're using, how you're using, and if you're not using, kind of retiring that subscription or reclaiming it so that we can help you actually manage that entire life cycle. So SaaS license management, really think of it as it's a discipline. It's a practice that you put in place using systems or tools where you can, one, get visibility into what you own. So we help you discover the various SaaS applications along with the subscriptions. So users who have access to those SaaS applications. Next, we try to keep a track of what you own in terms of entitlements as well, right? So right now there are various systems where you might be tapping in, making sure how many subscriptions you own, keeping a track of it, probably in spreadsheets too. But now you can get away with that by just entering all that information within ServiceNow. So now you have visibility into what you own. We've pulled in your subscription data, what you have actually bought in terms of your entitlements, and what you're actually using, right? So that's captured by the usage. So that is the entire, I would say, the entire SaaS lifecycle management that we help you track and monitor within ServiceNow.
Yeah, that's great. So you really have the life cycle there, the cradle to grave of just the software that you have from a SaaS perspective. My next question, though, is a little bit more technical, maybe. You know, when we talk about software and how it's discovered, there's many ways to discover software. Is there anything unique to SaaS, given that it's not physically installed on a device? And how does that work in SAM? How do we pull in information, discoverable information?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, discovering the SaaS applications and the subscriptions is one of the key feature or use cases within SaaS license management. We do it in a couple of ways, and I'm going to use terms like direct integrations or SSO integration or custom integration, and just kind of walk you through each of these sections, right? So what is really your use case? With either of these integration method that you use, all you're trying to do is get visibility into your subscriptions, get access to the last activity. When did the user last access that tool or perform an activity? And then based on that, you can perform some meaningful insights. So the first part over here that you see is really the direct integrations. Ever since our journey with SaaS license management, we've rolled out some really big logos. And all these are vendors typically that are super expensive when it comes to buying subscriptions. So we've tried to tackle those initial applications first. So now we have support for almost 35 plus integrations. Just with direct integration. And when I say direct integration, what we are really doing is using the vendor APIs to pull in that subscription information and the last activity data, right? So think of this as a direct vendor API integration. So we connect to the endpoint and we're able to pull in all the data. With these integrations, we do release them on the ServiceNow store. So the frequency at which you get them is a lot faster. We release these integrations almost every quarter. So you will see a list of like 4 or 5 integrations releasing every 3 months, where you can take advantage of getting that whole use case of visibility into your subscriptions and analyzing the usage. The next one is the single sign-on. The way the single sign-on providers work is very different, right? So we've tackled the big ones, which is Azure AD and Okta, which now gives us access to the organization's application catalog, right? And when I say catalog for Okta and Azure AD, you're really looking into like 10,000s of applications that you can access, right? So now with the SSO integration, you're able to connect to any of the application you want to monitor that your organization has signed up for. And then rest of the use case kind of follows the same, right? Where we're able to pull in the users, see their usage, and help you reclaim. So that's the single sign-on method. And then the last method is called as the custom integration, which is our SaaS license connection framework. It is a very low code, no code way of helping our customers create their own integrations, right? You might say that you have a logo that you do not support or that you want support for, which is not there on the slide right now, or it does not fall under the SSO category. So I really want to connect to that application. So as long as that particular vendor has APIs for you to use, APIs to connect and authenticate, APIs to pull in subscriptions, APIs to actually look into the last activity, you will be able to use this framework to create your own integration. And with each of these integrations, we then look into usage, which is really, really core strength of how we do it within our platform. And I'll talk here in a bit of how we go into the deep level of usage, which then eventually ties into your savings. But Victor, to your question, this is how we are enabling our customers. We have direct integrations, we have single sign-on, and then we have this SLC framework, which is very flexible. As long as you have all the information, you're able to connect to any application of your choice.
Yeah, this is great. So I like that there's different angles at which you can start pulling in information from your SaaS vendors, not least of which, having direct integration with vendors is perhaps the primary way of getting that information. So you talked a little bit about the different types of usage data that we might get from these integrations or setups. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, and to what degree of information do we get?
Yes, absolutely. The level of detail we get from SSO versus direct oftentimes varies. And I say that because with SSO, you're really looking at just your last login, right? So you might have accessed, let's say, Box as an application using SSO. So we will just tell you when you accessed Box. But if you go to a level deeper, which is again the vendor last login, that again is it's a little better than just saying when you last log in, but it gives you a breadth in the sense you can access when you last logged in between 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and you have the capability to define that. But again, that is still associated to the first one where you're just looking at login information, right? You're not really knowing what the user is doing with that application, which brings us to number 3, which is the most important part that we focus on, especially with direct integrations. That's called the meaningful usage data. So what this will tell you is you've accessed Box, but with Box, what activity did you perform, right? Did you upload a file, or did you comment on a file? Did you collaborate? So just tracking that level of detail would give you more meaningful insights so that you're able to gauge how well is the user using that application. So overall, in our journey of SAM implementation or SaaS implementation, I highly recommend the customers to make sure first take advantage of the direct integrations, right? Because that's going to be very accurate. It's going to tell you exactly when the user performed what activity. And if you don't get that level of detail from your direct integration, you can always then rely on the SSO, which just tells you when did the user last log in. So the category 1, 2, 3 often kind of fall under the direct integration or the SSO integration category, where you're managing user subscriptions. There is another flavor to SaaS applications, and that is when these applications have a consumption kind of model of licensing, right? So when I say consumption, that means how many units are you consuming? It could be how many gigabytes of storage have you consumed, or how many envelopes are you consuming for DocuSign, or how many contacts for Salesforce Marketing Cloud are you consuming? So it then tells you how many units of a particular thing are you consuming. Again, this does not apply to all the SaaS applications, but where it applies for the ones we've built, we also help you track that, right? So now you're able to see how many you own, what are you using, and how fast are you going to consume the quota that was allocated to you. So that falls under consumption analysis. And then the last one I spoke about is the customized usage that kind of ties into the SLC framework, where you have the ability to define what that usage is that you want to track, right? So it really ties into those custom integrations that you are creating. So again, just looking at this chart, you can see that most of the vendors or applications have support for 1 and 2. The third one is really very niche to all these direct vendors that we have support for, which again is the most accurate data that we would rely on. So given a combination of user subscription and consumption, that's how we will help you track your usage within ServiceNow.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I can see customers looking at this and saying, okay, if I were to plan out and scale some of my workloads, maybe I might focus on just those products where I'm looking at active and inactive users. And as I advance my use case or I advance my journey with SaaS, I might look in more in depth and make some more decisions based on how my users are using the data or using the software, right? So I know that there's vendors out there that might have different flavors of licensing depending on the complexity of their activities. And that's where I see 3, 4, and 5 kind of being valuable inputs to their decision making. So I thanks for kind of distinguishing that for us. I think that's really helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
So now I want to jump into another segment, Nirali. I want to talk about roles and responsibilities. So, you might have the same type of roles and stakeholders involved in on-prem as you do in SaaS, but there might be some other members from a SaaS perspective that are different. So could you talk to us about who are the folks that are involved in planning for this type of work?
Yeah, and that's a great question you bring up, because all this that I was explaining up until now, what is SaaS license management, what we can do, how we can do, excuse me, entails different personas, right? So this is not just limited to a user who's going to help you set up these integration. It starts a level up. Just to have this discipline in place, just to have this program approved, or even the buy-in, we always start with the executive sponsors, right? Because we need their sponsorship to make sure that we are going to help the organization realize value once we have integrated with various applications and ServiceNow software asset management has been fully implemented into their system. So executive buy-in, executive sponsorship is one of our top roles that do not actively feed into SaaS license management day-to-day activity, but the entire journey would start with them. Then you have roles like system admin, business owners. So system admin are pretty much users that will help you integrate with different applications, right? To integrate with different applications, you need to know how you can authenticate. You need to know what the credentials are. You need to know what the portal access looks like. So they are the ones who have those contacts, or they have that information that will help you establish the connection. And then the business owner is nothing but somebody who will help you kind of manage the purchase or even monitor what you've bought, right? So they are like a procurement team, but they are very specific to like a business unit or certain applications that they are purely focused on. And then, of course, you have the procurement team that's kind of taking in charge of the entire contract renewals, when are they coming up? So things like that are often captured by the procurement team. For other stakeholders, you have like the security vulnerability ones, the risk management ones. They are the users who are exposed to any kind of SaaS vulnerabilities, right? So if there is a software, it's vulnerable to something, they keep a track of that. There is a database. So you want to know them. You want to know what those vulnerabilities are, because next thing what you're going to do is mark that software or that particular SaaS application as a restricted software, right? So just collaborating with them will kind of help you manage other use cases outside of just purely managing visibility into your subscriptions or getting access to it and seeing the usage. So a lot more people collaborate in this entire journey of SaaS license management, besides, again, like the ones who will help you do the setup, right? So that's where we kind of start the journey with the executive team, work the way through, involving people who will actually help in day-to-day stuff. And then the end goal is, once you have that meaningful insights, you're again presenting your finding back to the executive. So it's like a complete circle, involves a lot more people, and that's how you're able to successfully get full advantage of this program.
Yeah, and it's not a one-time thing, right? I mean, you'll meet with these folks on a regular basis. You might have an initial meeting where you talk about your original goals, what you're trying to achieve. And what I've seen successful customers do is they'll have quarterly business reviews where they might reconvene, look at how the progress is going, make any adjustments as needed. And like you said earlier, some folks might just be involved at the initial stages, like the SaaS admin, who will help set up all the configuration and give access so that SAM can start pulling in data. But then there are other folks that'll be there for the long haul, right? The executives that'll get reports back how things are progressing, the SaaS business owner who might look at how the usage compares to how they originally purchased the product. So there's a lot of folks in there. And like you said, it's not a one-time thing, it's a cyclical thing. And it's good to have that as part of your practice and overall governance structure.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too. I know you briefly kind of touched upon goals, and I would like to even deep dive a little more into goal setting and how the executive team and other team members help you establish the goals, right? Because when you kickstart this journey, it's important for you to know what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve, versus just saying, I want to connect to all my integrations and I then want to get visibility into my subscriptions, right? That's now like a big goal that you have. So I highly recommend, like when it comes to goal setting for SaaS license management, my recommendation to customers has always been use goals that are very specific to you, in the sense you're able to quantify it, versus having some that are aggressive, right? Because if you look at the nature of all these SaaS applications, it is complex. Even though we make it sound easy, like it's just connecting to direct integration, but each application is different in the sense what they track, how they track, what kind of data comes in. So you want to make sure that your goals are very, very specific. So just to walk you through some examples, and these are examples that are I've kind of had when I've helped the customer bring up to speed with their SaaS license management offering, right? One would be where I would say, I want to manage all my SaaS spend. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's aggressive. You would definitely need help to define what those applications are. What does your spend look like? Versus I have the customer redefine that goal and say, okay, I'm first going to track Salesforce across 2 of my largest organizations in the next 2 months. And why is that a powerful goal? Is because now the customer has shortlisted Salesforce, which happens to be their most expensive application. 2, he has identified the 2 largest organizations that contribute to that spend. And now he has a timeline, right? That he wants to achieve this in the next 2 months. So it's very important to have these goals, because it's going to help you track the progress that you make along once the implementation has been done. The second one is one classic example I've heard of unrealistic, I would say, goal was, I want to reduce my spend by 30%. Now, what does that even mean, right? Like, you want to identify which of your subscriptions are the most expensive one. Just sticking to the Salesforce example, within Salesforce too, we know that there are so many products that contribute to the Salesforce licensing. Which is the one that contributes to your majority of the spend, right? So that would be, let's say, permission set licenses in this case. So then we help the customer just to primarily focus on their permission set licenses. We help them set up their Salesforce integration. We pull in the permission set, they entered in their entitlements, and they were able to see the value out of that. So again, just being focused on a certain set of licenses within Salesforce versus just attacking Salesforce as a big integration altogether, right? And then you have some where they're like, okay, we want to just reclaim all the stale licenses. You want to first understand how you want to reclaim, right? So you want to just make sure that after you do Salesforce, you're then going to tackle the next top vendor or application based on spend. And then you might expand into more, I would say, mature capability or feature set like spend detection. So just trying to sequence out your implementation also goes a long way. So just having your goals very structured, meaningful to your organization, and keep them time bound, right? Because that will help you measure progress that you make along.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that stood out to me there was that, even if you pick one vendor that you're after, in this case, you said it was a Salesforce, even at that point, you're still not done with specifying what is it that you want to do, right? Each vendor might have different licensing terms or different user license that dictates how customers will be using the product. And you might have many organizations in your business unit that are using the product. And so being able to just not just say the vendor, but go one step further and say this specific title for this specific organization, I think is a really clear way of keeping things focused and organized. And when you take those successes from that initial scope, you can expand and be more successful overall without getting into too much trouble along the way. That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And you kind of nailed it and summarized it very well.
Let's talk a little bit about how I should do this as a customer. I've found the right folks. I've identified the right product that I want to do this integration for, or the SSO, what have you. How do I actually get sassy with the tool? How do I use it?
Yes. So again, like I cannot emphasize enough, having a structured plan often goes a long way, right? Which means now you know the roles and people involved and what it takes to successfully implement the program. So oftentimes, I think the structure that's really worked well for my customers is giving them this kind of a idea to jumpstart their program, right? You have a kickoff meeting where you have the executive sponsorship, you have all the team members who are going to be involved. You probably might need some system admins of all the different integrations you're going to eventually connect to. Then you would determine the list of SaaS integrations, right? If your organization has, let's say, hundreds of applications, which one do you want to tackle first? So just having a structured list of that as well really helps. The way I have tried to help my customers prioritize is look at their spend. Once they give me a list of applications, I would just look at the spend. Tackle the most expensive ones first, because likelihood of you having more number of subscriptions and realizing more savings from that is going to be high. So definitely kind of prioritizing your SaaS integrations will go a long way. And then you want to make sure that there is a timeline, right? Like in my goal example that I gave earlier, they measured it within 2 months, because you want to make sure you're marching towards a timeline. Just having a open-end project plan with no timelines to track is not going to help you. So definitely have some timelines and then march towards it. Once you've done all that in the kickoff, I think rest of it is really how you plan it, how you implement, analyze, and report, right? So when it comes to planning, each of the integrations that you've shortlisted, right? You want to make sure that you go through the instruction guides that we provide. We have worksheets available to you. We have documentation or even playbooks for some of our integrations. You just want to make sure that you're able to kind of go step by step to successfully be able to connect to those integrations, right? So you've prepared your ServiceNow instance, and now you're preparing for connecting to these different SaaS integrations. Once you've set up the integrations, next thing you want to do is enter your procurement data, right? Because that would be a logical step. I have discovered through the integration setup, I've been able to discover what subscriptions I have, but now you want to enter how many entitlements you have. So that is where you start implementing your contract data or your procurement data into the system. And then you would reconcile. So once you reconcile that data, you're going to analyze the results, which are in form of either reports that you can see or dashboards, because dashboards really roll up all the data that you need to analyze, right? So that's where you start analyzing the dashboard. You look at what recommendations we have for potential savings. Do you want to really reclaim subscriptions that were not being used, or do you want to notify the user? So taking action against that would be very important in your analyze phase. And then everything circles back to going back to your leadership and telling them, hey, this is what we found. This is what the dashboard looks like. This is your overall spend. This is what my savings look like. So you're able to provide in-depth, meaningful insights right from that dashboard back to your executive leadership, right? And you would then do this with every integration. Once you set up the integration once, that's all you need, because the rest of the process is then automated for the integrations that you already set up. And when I say automated, basically you would have scheduled jobs that run at a certain time and they would just kick off when the schedule kicks in. So you don't have to worry about setting up the integration all over again. So that's why I would highly, again, stress on the need of following the instructions and making sure you go step by step to successfully connect to these integrations.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the upfront investment allows you to then continuously operationalize and report on how your SaaS usage is carrying out in your organization. You made one quick comment about implementation. I think it's worth noting. Setting up the integrations first before inputting the entitlements. This is something that's fairly nuanced, but it's pretty important because when you look at this from an on-premise standpoint, we recommend customers to create the entitlements first and then set up the installations. So just bear that in mind that from a SaaS perspective, it's setting up the integration first and then the entitlement information. I think you have a much cleaner implementation experience doing it that way. Nirali, you also talked about the dashboard view. So can you show that to us? What does the end result look like if I were a customer? I have set this up with my team. I'm now getting results, and I want to carry it back to my executive sponsor and show the good work that we've done.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to steal screen share from you.
Yes, that's fine.
All right. Let me know if you can see my screen right here.
We do. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So this is within our software asset workspace. Again, we are moving towards the next gen UI. So if you're familiar with our releases, starting Rome, you will see this new modern user experience. And within that, one of the dashboards we have is going to be focused on the SaaS overview dashboard. So the way you would just navigate is we have asset analytics, and then we have the various dashboards over here. The SaaS overview dashboard, again, what it's going to do is it's going to combine information related to your user subscriptions, as well as the consumption licensing models that I talked earlier. And it kind of combines all that view into this one dashboard. So the top part is really focused. Everything is around user subscriptions right here. And then the bottom part is where you have your consumption related data. And then over here, I think what I really like about this dashboard is I don't need to go into any other views, or I don't need to drill down into any other reports, because all my top key KPIs that my leadership would really care about are right here, right? So then you can pretty much just walk them through this dashboard. And also within the dashboard, you have the ability to drill down. So that will tell you what data actually makes up to the numbers that you see over here. So this is all in all a very, very comprehensive dashboard, again, highlighting all the key KPIs that you would want to report on. Also, I understand that there would be thousands of applications probably you're working with, or I would say more than 50 applications you've connected, and you really care only about one application, right? Maybe Salesforce, and then you really want to just focus on Salesforce. So in that, in order to be able to do that, you have the ability to even set your own filters, right? So if you're just focused on Salesforce, you're going to select the publisher as Salesforce, and that way it can guide you through. The data gets refreshed just for Salesforce, and then you're able to just present those findings. So it gives you that flexibility to slice and dice the data the way you want it.
Yeah, that's great, because sometimes you might be speaking to a business owner as well as the executive on Salesforce, right? And you want to just show the reporting based on that, or you want to talk to the business owner about Box and you just want to show that level of detail. And then if you want to have that comprehensive view to just speak with your management, then you can do that, right? So that allows you to have the right conversations and the meaningful conversations with the folks and personas that are most interested in that particular vendor. Thanks for sharing that, Nirali. Appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely.
So a natural progression from SaaS license management would be spend detection. So do you mind telling us a little bit more about spend detection and where that fits into the overall SaaS play?
Sure. Yeah. So as you kind of pointed out, it's like a bonus feature, I would say. So spend detection is a feature that comes with your existing software asset management professional SKU. No additional entitlements or licensing is required to use this feature. This feature is, however, different. So up until you were pulling in your SaaS integrations, you were really focused around user subscriptions, right? And then you're entering your entitlements. So that is all related to the pure SaaS world. Now there is a part of the SaaS spend that is unknown or it's not managed. And how are we able to discover that unmanaged spend is through software spend detection. So with this feature, you're able to import your financial transactions. It could be from your financial systems or general ledger. We give you a template out of the box, and we really don't need a whole set of data. There are like 5, 6 attributes we really want so that we can help you kind of normalize that data and help you analyze those transactions. So you would just import that template into our system, and then using machine learning we've built models that will analyze those transactions, right? And based on that we will be able to determine whether the cost that you had was on real software use or that was not something that was approved by the organization, right? So that way you're able to then detect what your shadow IT spend looks like using spend transactions. The other thing that we will do with this data is give you a view into your overlapping software, right? So you could be using multiple tools for doing, let's say, collaboration or communication or hosting a meeting. That is where we will analyze and tell you, for instance, you have Zoom and you have, let's say, Microsoft Teams, and you're using the same, you're using 2 different tools to do the same thing, which is host meetings. So we want to bring that visibility to your attention, because what we really want you to analyze is, do you really need 2 tools or can 1 tool suffice, right? In that case, you might then want to create a project task for your IT admin to take a look at. So come next renewal, they know that they just want to renew maybe the Zoom subscription and they don't need Microsoft Teams. So making those meaningful decisions is going to be possible using this feature. So you're getting insights into what your unknown software spend looks like using the financial transaction, as well as you're able to gauge how you can reduce the use of tools that are probably doing the same thing. So this feature is unique in the sense we are actually collaborating or integrating with another product over here, which is the SPM product. It was formerly the IT business management product. So with that, what we are trying to do is help you create demands, right? So the example that I gave you where you have Zoom and Microsoft Teams, you want to, let's say, deprecate one of them, you will be able to create a demand using this product feature. And then you will be able to initiate that whole task for the IT admin to retire one. So that is where spend detection is a little unique in the sense it stands a little different from your normal SaaS license management. But once you've kind of matured your journey through SaaS license management, the next logical step would be to look into spend detection. So that way you can now take, like, you will have the full view of what your user subscriptions look like, but also at the same time you've analyzed your spend.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So you can be very intentional about this, right? So you know what SaaS vendors you might have already in your environment. And so that's what you use for direct integration, SSO, or some custom integrations. But then you might want to say, hey, is there something out there I don't know? And that's where kind of spend detection falls into place. Nirali, is spend detection an additional charge to customers, or is it something that's embedded with their existing subscription?
Yes, it will be included with your SAM Pro SKU. There is just a legal agreement kind of documentation or amendment that you need to sign prior to using. It's just because you're importing the financial transactions into the system. But as far as licensing is concerned, you will be able to take advantage of this using the same SAM Pro SKU.
Okay, got it. So no charge, but you have to sign an amendment and probably if you don't have that already, speak with your ServiceNow representative, and they'll help with that. The last thing I'll say before we move to the next slide is the information that is coming in from the financial transaction perspective. It's not every single piece of data that we're using, right? We're only using a certain amount of categories or data fields that we use for our predictive analytics. I just want to set that record straight. That's correct. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Victor.
Okay, awesome. So what are some takeaways that we can get from this session here? How do we get quick time to value if I was a customer?
Yes, so the quickest path to SAM value, and again, this has been tried and tested with our customers as well, is first you want to start with SaaS, right? What happens by reducing your SaaS spend? One, connecting to these integrations is a lot easier than trying to go the on-prem route or doing discovery of anything else. So with the SaaS license management, you're able to now get visibility into all these subscriptions. You're able to gauge usage. You're able to reclaim as well. So the fastest time to value is start your journey with SaaS, and also a lot of spend by organizations. Most of their IT budget kind of contributes more towards a SaaS spend, especially we've seen that trend in the last 2-3 years where more of the on-prem world is now moving to the cloud, right? So can't emphasize enough, but start with your SaaS journey. The second part, then once you've progressed from the SaaS, I would say explore the spend detection, right? Take on the spend detection part, and also take advantage of Cloud Insights, which is another product offering that we have where you can optimize your cloud resource spend, right? So take a look into that. And once you've explored that as well, you move on to the third part, which is going to be install driven, right? So this is where you have your on-prem licenses, and this is where you would want to make sure that you have your discovery set up. You're able to discover the installs. You have the entitlement information entered correctly. So this journey will definitely make sure that you are set on a path to succeed, right? Because you're starting with something that's going to get you fastest value, and then you move on to the more, I would say, complex ones at the same time, which can probably take time, maybe in configuration or whatnot. So you want to just make sure that you are starting with SaaS and then you move on as guided. And then when you tie this up with the plan that we walked through, the kickoff plan and the journey approach that you would take, you're definitely on the path to success.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, this is at a high level, this is very similar to what you were saying from a goal setting perspective, right? Be specific, be intentional, start with something small, and then eventually grow and expand. Because as you do that, you get expertise, you get experience, you know how to tackle certain situations, and you'll be more successful on your journey, while at the same time reporting back to your executive sponsorship all the different wins you're getting along the way. I think that's great. Thanks for that, Nirali.